If you've been charged with a drug offense in Texas, one of the first things you probably did was Google your charge. If you're like millions of other people, you may have asked ChatGPT or another AI tool, "What am I facing?" Here's the problem. AI can sound incredibly confident while giving you completely wrong information about your case. And when it comes to Texas drug sentencing, getting it wrong can mean the difference between thinking you're eligible for probation when you're actually facing a 25-year mandatory minimum. I'm Michael Lowe. I'm a board-certified criminal defense lawyer and former felony prosecutor. I used to handle organized crime and drug cases for the state, and now I defend people charged with these offenses. Today, I'm going to show you why you should never rely on AI for legal advice about your Texas drug case. I've built what I believe is the first comprehensive drug offense sentencing calculator of its kind, and I'm going to put it head to head against the most popular AI tool people use for legal questions. Let's see which one gets it right. The problem with AI legal advice. First, let me explain why AI is so dangerous for legal questions, especially Texas drug cases. The complexity problem. Texas drug sentencing isn't simple. We're talking about 8 distinct substance categories, over 350 controlled substances, 12 different punishment classifications, and more than 15 enhancement factors that can stack on top of each other in complex ways. When you do the math, there's over 500,000 possible combinations of factors that can affect your sentencing range. One wrong assumption about how enhancements interact and your entire understanding of your case is wrong. The confidence problem. Here's what makes AI particularly dangerous. It sounds confident even when it's completely wrong. Studies have shown that AI chatbots will give you well-written, authoritative-sounding answers that are factually incorrect. They've been caught citing cases that don't exist, applying the wrong state's laws, and missing critical nuances that completely change the outcome. In fact, courts across the country have sanctioned lawyers for submitting briefs with AI-generated fake case citation. One database tracking AI hallucinations in court filings has already documented over 480 cases worldwide with AI fabricated legal information. The Texas-specific problem. Texas drug laws are particularly tricky for AI because, first, we have unique enhancement provisions that don't exist in other states. Drug-free zones, use of a child, social media enhancements for delivery cases, and several other. Our habitual offender laws under the Texas Penal Code 12.42 have specific rules about how prior convictions enhance a sentence. Third, we have mandatory probation provisions for certain first-time drug offenders that AI almost never knows about. Fourth, our parole eligibility rules are complex and depend on the specific combination of enhancements alleged. And fifth, the Texas legislature just passed new drug sentencing laws in 2025 that AI tools trained on older data simply don't know about. What I built and why. Because of this complexity, I built the Texas Drug Offense Sentencing Calculator. This is not an AI tool. I coded every single rule, every enhancement, every interaction between sentencing provisions based on my professional understanding of Texas law. The calculator includes the complete, up-to-date list of controlled substances from the official Texas Department of State Health Services penalty group schedules, including newly scheduled substances like nitazene class synthetic opioid. All the enhancement factors that can affect your case, including drug-free zone allegations, deadly weapon findings, prior felony enhancements, habitual offender status under the 3 strikes law, use of a child, delivery to a minor, and the new 2025 social media enhancement. Accurate calculations for probation eligibility, deferred adjudication eligibility, mandatory probation provisions, parole eligibility, and whether these sentences run consecutively with any other sentences. Now, I want to be clear. My calculator is not legal advice. It's an educational tool. It's possible there could be a mistake, and it only evaluates a single charge at a time. You should always consult with a qualified attorney about your specific situation. Here's my hypothesis. Even with those limitations, a purpose-built legal tool created by an experienced criminal defense attorney will dramatically outperform a general-purpose AI when it comes to calculating Texas drug sentencing consequence. Let's test that theory. The experiment setup. For this experiment, I'm going to use ChatGPT. It's by far the most popular AI tool that people use to answer legal questions. It's free and accessible to everyone, which means it's probably what you would use if you went looking for information about your case. I've created 3 sample Texas drug indictments. These are realistic charging instruments that are similar to cases I've had in my own practice. Indictment number 1, this is the easy one. This is a simple possession case. Cocaine, less than 1 gram with no enhancement. If AI can't get this one right, we have a serious problem. But here's the twist. I'm going to upload the indictment first without saying anything about the criminal history. Then I'm going to ask ChatGPT, how would the sentence be affected if the defendant had no prior criminal history? This tests whether AI knows about one of the most important provisions in Texas drug law, the mandatory probation rule for first-time offenders on small possession cases. If someone has never been convicted of a felony before, the judge is required to give them probation on this charge. It's not discretionary, it's mandatory. If ChatGPT just tells someone you're facing 180 days to 2 years in the state jail without mentioning a first-time offender is almost certainly getting probation, that's a massive failure. That person is going to be terrified for no reason. Indictment number 2. This is the medium one. This is a delivery case with a drug-free zone enhancement. The defendant is charged with delivering methamphetamine near a college campus. AI needs to understand how the drug-free zone enhancement affects the punishment range, probation eligibility, parole, and whether the sentence must run consecutively with any other sentence. And indictment number 3, this is the hard one. This is where it gets interesting. This indictment includes a fentanyl delivery with 5 enhancement paragraphs: drug-free zone, deadly weapon, social media enhancement, and 2 prior felony penitentiary trips, which trigger the habitual offender status. For this one, AI would need to understand how all these enhancements stack, what order they apply in, and how they affect the final punishment range, and what happens to probation and parole eligibility. Let's see how ChatGPT does. All right, so here we are. We have ChatGPT on my computer screen, and we have some indictments that I've prepared. The first indictment is the one that we talked about before. This is the easy indictment. This is a possession of cocaine less than 1 gram in Dallas County. This one I think ChatGPT will get right. But let's give it a try and see how ChatGPT does. So I've got the indictment here in a PDF document. I'm going to drag it over to Chat to see what happens. Then I'm going to ask Chat a question. What are the sentencing consequences for this indictment? It says that it's a state jail felony. Well, that's correct. It cites the correct statute. And then now it gives us a range of punishment, which is 180 days to 2 years and an optional fine not to exceed $10,000. It also talks about some possible other things that could happen, like probation or deferred or drug treatment. It talks about some enhancements, so that's good that it knows about that. It also talks about some other collateral consequences, about having a felony record and a driver's license suspension if you're convicted. But it doesn't say anything about, it doesn't ask any questions about whether this person's been in trouble before. But so far, so good. ChatGPT's got it right. This is the correct range of punishment in Texas for a state jail felony. So now let's change it up a little bit and tell ChatGPT that there's no criminal history. I have no criminal history. Does that change any of the sentencing consequences? you mentioned, if I can spell. See what chat says about that. Yes. Having no prior criminal history significantly improves your position in a Texas possession case like this. Okay, well, that's true. While the statutory punishment range technically stays the same, your real world exposure is much lower. Okay, well, let's find out if that's really true. So let's check out the Texas drug offense sentencing calculator that I created, and let's see if that's actually accurate. So we'll go ahead and pick our substance. So we're going to pick cocaine, right? And we go to the next. We're a possession case, not a manufacturer, but a possession case. We select the quantity, less than a gram. We continue. And this is a preliminary status. This is not the actual sentencing range. This is just what things are before my tool asks additional questions. So the first question it wants to know is, do you have a prior felony conviction? And I'm going to say no. Look how things have changed here under preliminary status. Mandatory probation from a judge and 180 days to 2 years from a jury. So in other words, my tool is giving me the accurate law in Texas, which is that if you have a state jail drug case like cocaine and you've never been convicted of a felony before, then the judge is required to give you probation. So the actual range of punishment is mandatory probation in a case like that. You can go through the rest of the enhancement questions and the final answer will be the same. We'll go ahead and do that. Drug-free zone, no, no. Deadly weapon, no. And here's the final answer. Mandatory probation from a judge. It's the penalty range for a state jail cocaine case. So on the first test, ChatGPT kind of got half of it right. Didn't get all of it right, got half of it right. So, and the part that it got wrong could be very alarming to somebody. I mean, if you are somebody who has never been in trouble before and you got arrested for a state jail felony and you just got out of jail and you ask ChatGPT, you're going to think that you're facing 6 months to 2 years in the state jail. You're not going to realize that that's really not your range of punishment if you have no record. Your range of punishment is mandatory probation. So ChatGPT is probably going to make you a little more upset than you really need to be about your case. Now, obviously, it's upsetting enough, but it makes it worse to go to ChatGPT for sure. So let's go to our second indictment. And let's get that out. Test number 2, that's what I call it. So let's drag it over here. And we'll ask the same question. What are these sentencing consequences for this indictment? Now this is a medium difficulty one. This is one with a drug-free zone. And let's review the indictment real quick so we know what we're talking about. This person's name is Marcus Anthony Williams. If that's your real name, I'm sorry. It's just a made-up name. It's not you. You're being accused of delivery of methamphetamine 4 to 200 grams. So what is that? In Texas, that's a first-degree felony. So we have a first-degree felony. A first-degree felony is a 5 to life case. And we also have what's called an enhancement paragraph. It's called a drug-free zone. And it's alleging that Mr. Williams delivered this quantity of methamphetamine within 1,000 feet of El Centro College, which is a small college campus in downtown Dallas. And so we want to see how ChatGPT does with this. We want to see if it knows what happens when you have a drug-free zone enhancement on a first-degree felony. So it says the first thing it says is correct, that this is a first-degree felony. So it's not a possession, it's a delivery, which is more severe. So that is true. It says it's a first degree, so that's correct. And now it talks about the drug-free zone enhancement. Okay, so it says there's a mandatory increase in the punishment range. That's correct. The minimum prison term increases by 5 years. Correct, too. So far, so good. It's actually doing a pretty good job of calculating the mandatory minimum. Let's carry on, though. It talks about probation eligibility is restricted, but it doesn't really explain how it's a restriction. There probably needs to be a little more detail than that. It says the bottom line is it's a 10 to life case. That's true. It says that the judge cannot place the defendant on probation unless the jury recommends it. Well, that's true, but there's a little more detail that it's missing. Now, it also says there's no deferred there's no deferred adjudication for this offense. That we're going to find out may not be true. And then it talks about how parole might be different, but doesn't explain how it's different. Okay, so this is the answer. It's getting a lot of things right, but also confusing some things, I think. So let's look at the calculator to see what that's going to say about a case like this. So let's start over again. And we're going to pick our substance. This time it's methamphetamine. There it is, penalty group 1, methamphetamine. Continue. This is a delivery case. So we're going to select delivery. This was a 4 to 200 case. So here we are. This is correct. It's a 5 to life case. That's the preliminary status of the case. If we start answering questions, we need to get into it. So let's go. Death or serious bodily injury? No. Or felony conviction? No. Drug-free zone? Yeah. Now what happens here? We see that the case turns into a 10 to 99 years or life. So that's the same as what ChatGPT said. It also says that we're eligible for probation. We're eligible for probation from a jury, but not from a judge. But it does say we're eligible for deferred, and that's called deferred adjudication. So let's finish out the questions here. So prior drug-free zone? No. Deadly weapon? No. Social media enhancement? No. This is the final result here. So you can't get probation from a judge on a case like this, but you can get deferred adjudication, and that's important because deferred adjudication for a lot of folks is actually a better outcome than a straight probation from a judge. It's not a felony conviction. So you can get a deferred on a drug-free zone case like this. And you can also get probation from a jury. Here's the other part that ChatGPT did not get accurate. The drug-free zone application changes parole eligibility. So if you get a penitentiary sentence in a case like this, you have to serve the first 5 years calendar time. So if you got a 5-year, in this case, you would have the mandatory minimum is 10 years. So if you were to get a 10-year sentence, then you'd have to serve at least 5 calendar years before you're eligible for parole. That's an important detail that most people should know about. The other thing that ChatGPT didn't mention or didn't even pick up on is the fact that if you get convicted on a drug-free zone case, you are receiving a stacked sentence. So if you get a drug-free zone conviction and another conviction, the sentences cannot run concurrently. They have to be stacked one on top of the other. So these two things right here, parole and the stacked sentence, are things that ChatGPT just didn't know about or didn't pick up on at all. And then also ChatGPT didn't know about the fact that you can get a deferred adjudication on a case like this from a judge. So those are some important details that ChatGPT got wrong. But I would say it got about 60% of it right. So that's not too bad. So let's go to our third indictment here. Let's go ahead and drag and drop our third indictment, are the sentencing consequences for this indictment. All right, let's find out. This is the complicated one. So before we see the answer, we got to look at it. Okay, this is our indictment. It's a little more complicated, so I'm going to blow it up so you can look at it. This is DeAndre Lamont Jackson. I'm sorry, DeAndre, if this is your name, but it's just a made-up indictment. It's not your case. So, but this is the indictment. It's a fentanyl case. It's a 1 to 4 grams. It's a delivery, 1 to 4 grams. Here it is: unlawfully, intentionally, and knowingly deliver a controlled substance, fentanyl, 1 to 4 grams. And this happened in Dallas. And there's a drug-free zone. Okay, so we have to think about the fact that this happened near Reverchon Park. That's an enhancement paragraph. Here's another enhancement paragraph, that there's a deadly weapon involved. So there was a deadly weapon used in this offense, alleged. There's also a social media enhancement. I guess DeAndre may have used Facebook or Instagram to sell the fentanyl in this case, the allegation. And then there's also 2 prior felony conviction enhancement paragraphs. And these are called felony penitentiary trips. And you can see here, there's 2 of them. So now in my indictment, in my fake indictment, I include all of the sections to the law that apply. So you can, I guess I'm giving AI a little bit of a a leg up here so that it can see how some of these things can change the sentencing. So let's see how this all works out. All right, so this is the base offense level. It's a 2 to 20 case. I think is right. So it is a 2 to 20 case. It's a 1 to 4 gram fentanyl delivery case. That makes it a 2 to 20. So this part, I'm pretty sure is correct. The drug-free zone. It's saying that it raises the minimum punishment, requiring additional mandatory prison time. But it doesn't really say how that works or how it raises the punishment. So that's pretty vague. It says deadly weapon. It says you don't get good time credit. Well, that's not exactly true. It does affect your parole, so that's correct, but not even close to accurate, saying that it's less likely you're going to get probation, but it doesn't explain who can give you probation. So that's important. That's something you should probably know. The use of social media in a drug delivery case, that does enhance the punishment. Yes, that is true, but it doesn't explain how. The 2 prior felony conviction. Now this one, it does actually give me the correct range of punishment for 2 prior felony convictions. So it is a 25 to life case. That is accurate. So the other enhancements, it didn't really have anything specific to say about, but this one in particular, the 2 prior pen trips, it does get that right. So we'll give it a little credit for that. So this is the final sentencing exposure summary. It says 2 to 20, drug-free zone, deadly weapon, doesn't explain how those work. And then the final range is 25 to life. Now, I will say that is correct. So the final range is accurate here. So that is true. It says probation is not available. That is true as well. If all these enhancements are found, a jury can't give you probation. A judge can't give you straight probation. Although we're about to find out if a judge can give you deferred on a case like this. It might be interesting to find that out. And then it says parole is extremely limited, but it doesn't say how it's limited or what parole eligibility rules are going to apply in a case like this. And it also doesn't say anything about whether this case has to run consecutively or concurrently with another case. So this is kind of more general information, and it gets some of it right. So the 25 to 99 years or life, that part is correct. It pretty much, the rest of it is more just generic, general information. It's not anything specific. So let's look at the drug offender calculator. So we'll start over again here. The first one we want to look at is this is a fentanyl case, right? So fentanyl, that's our first substance here. Continue. It's a delivery, 1 to 4 gram. Okay, 2 to 20. So that's correct. Now, in our indictment, there was no death or serious bodily injury, so we say no to that. There was no fentanyl-related death, no. Or felony conviction, yes. Okay, and we can see now jury probation's off the table with our preliminary result here, but we have to keep going to get the final answer. Drug-free zone, our case did have a drug-free zone, yes. Prior drug-free zone, no. Weapon, deadly weapon. Well, we did have a deadly weapon, yes. Social media enhancement, yes, we had a social media enhancement. So now we're up to 10 to life, but we haven't gotten into the habitual offender. What is a trip? And so in the calculator, you can see that there's a definition for what a trip is to the penitentiary. Basically, if you actually go to the penitentiary and serve a sentence, that's a felony trip. And so a felony trip would count as an enhancement paragraph. So we're going to say, yes, we have some felony trips, and we have 2 or more alleged in the indictment. So now this is the final result. The final result is a 25 to 99 years or life. But there's some differences with ChatGPT. With ChatGPT, it's saying it's 25 to 99 years or life. It doesn't talk about the fine. The fine's actually doubled because of the social media enhancement that doubles the fine. So it's actually a $20,000 fine maximum. Also, the social media enhancement changes it to a 10-year minimum, but then when you apply the 2 prior felony pen trips, that makes it a 25 to life. So more that needs to be looked at here, though, because if we look at deferred adjudication, it's still available. So deferred adjudication, although in an indictment like this, I would say is very unlikely to happen, but it is still a possibility, and it's something a defendant should probably know about in a case like this. But more importantly, a defendant should know about how their sentence will run consecutively with any other sentence. And that's because of the drug-free zone. The drug-free zone makes it a mandatory consecutive sentence. So it's a stacked sentence in this case. And that's not something that ChatGPT knows about. So ChatGPT did get some of it right, but left out some really important parts. So overall, I would say ChatGPT did a pretty decent job, but against the calculator that I've created here, it's no match. I mean, this calculator is going to give you some accurate results, and it's also going to give you very specific details about the case that you need to know about in your case. It probably will affect how you make a decision in your case. So what's the takeaway here? Do not rely on AI for legal advice about your Texas drug case. AI tools like ChatGPT are impressive. They can write poems. They can help you brainstorm ideas and answer general knowledge questions. But when it comes to something as serious as understanding what you're facing on a criminal charge, they are not reliable. Texas drug sentencing laws are extraordinarily complex. It requires an understanding of how multiple statutes interact, how enhancements stack, and how recent legislative changes can affect your case. A general purpose AI simply cannot replicate the knowledge that comes from years of experience practicing in this specific area of law. What you should do instead, if you're facing a drug charge in Texas, I encourage you to use the free Texas Drug Offense Sentencing Calculator on my website at dallasjustice.com. It will give you a detailed breakdown of your potential sentencing range, including all applicable enhancements, probation eligibility, parole calculations, deferred adjudication eligibility, and whether your case will run consecutively with any other cases. I don't ask for any personal information on my website. You don't have to enter your name. I don't ask for your name. I don't ask for any personal information at all. But remember, even my calculator is not a substitute for proper legal advice. It's a tool to help you understand the general landscape of your case. To get an accurate assessment of your specific situation, you need to speak with a qualified criminal defense attorney who can review your indictment, evaluate the state's evidence, and develop a defense strategy. And here's something important to remember. Just because the state has alleged an enhancement in your indictment does not mean that enhancement will be proven at trial or applied at sentencing. With proper legal representation, many enhancement allegations can be challenged, negotiated, or defeated. The sentencing range you see in the calculator is what you're facing if everything the state alleges is proven true. An experienced defense attorney's job is to fight those allegations and minimize your exposure. If you're facing a drug charge in Dallas or anywhere else in Texas and you want to discuss your case with someone who has been on both sides of these cases, give my office a call. The consultation is free, and I will give you my honest assessment of what you're dealing with. I'm Michael Lowe. Find me at dallasjustice.com or call me 214-526-1900. Thank you for watching.